Hey man, I'm Bronson, and I want to talk about the Fable cards that we have for Flesh and Blood in 2020. The Heart of Fandel, the Eye of Ophidia, and the Arknight Shard. Now, I want to first talk about how the market is taking these cards as a whole. I'm not going to go into pricing or any of that stuff. I just want to tell you, what I see in the market and what's kind of at play there. And then I want to really gravitate towards the real purpose and really the depth behind these cards and why I feel they were created the way they are. Now, just to give you a disclosure at the beginning, I am not an investment advisor. Not giving you an investment advice here. You can do whatever you want with your money. I am just doing this video as an entertainment type thing. I am an entertainer. I am Bronson. I am just a guy in a room. There's no corporate structure here. I'm just a normal guy just like you, and this is not investment advice. So the point of the matter is simple on this, man. The market, from what I see in my opinion, this is a supply issue. If you think about supply and demand and that whole curve in the graph and that boring ass class you took back in college or high school, this is just if you basically plot the lines out and you draw the supply line like barely up, like that's exactly what you have. You have like no supply of these cards that we've been communicated to and that we've seen on eBay and the open market and what have you. All those groups out there that are selling Flesh and Blood cards, there's just not enough supply of these cards to go around. And people know this, and people know how rare these are because they were, extremely rare. And not only that, the Heart of Fandel in particular, it is the rarest card in the alpha print for Flesh and Blood as a whole. So obviously that thing's gonna demand some sort of crazy premium because it really is kind of like one of a kind. It's kind of the rarest, you know, thing to go for when you're collecting this game. I mean, there's really nothing else to say other than that. I mean, it's really a supply issue. I mean, just if you think about, what's going on in the market, I think that, you know, there are other factors in play, obviously, but that is the main thing. Now, if you look at the playability of this card, which is the next thing, supply is very low, and I feel like that's the main driver. So playability, I think each card has good playability. Are they broken? Not in any means, not in any stretch of the word. And I feel like these cards are really compared to like the Power 9 of Magic the Gathering and other, crazy cards that do crazy things. But honestly, like, in my opinion, these cards are really good long game. If you have like long games in the pro scene, I think that these could have places in those types of decks. Because if you think about these, the more times you use them, the more times you pitch with them, the more usage you're going to get out of the card. And if you drag on the game long enough, you really get more value the more times you use the card because you're pitching it more times. But honestly, overall, in the Blitz format, I think it's still useful. I've heard of different classes using, the Eye of Ophidia, for instance, for the Op 2. I believe the what is it? The Wizard has some really good, synergy with Opt, so that's good. And the pitch for 3 is nice, but overall, I feel like these aren't cards that you need to play the game. These are definitely not stuff that you need to compete at a pro level. And you may disagree with me on that point, but if you look at any of the national tournaments, which I have, and I've looked at the deck lists, I don't really see, I don't think I've seen any of these Fable cards in the national tournaments at this time. Now note as well is that this game is still picking up steam, and people in the national tournaments probably don't have the excessive amount of funds to just blow on these cards and get them if they wanted to actually put it in their deck to begin with. But to be honest, from what I've heard and from what I've seen, I feel like the pros have also said that these cards are nice, but the problem is when you have them in your hand, you can't block. You can't use them to block. You're kind of screwed in that aspect. So, they are good for what they do. They pitch for 3 and they have a nice little ability, but they don't have like the utility of blocking, and it really is kind of situational on that aspect. And if you think about the benefit, right? So the Heart of Fandel. When you have it in your hand, if you pitch for it, you get the maximum amount of pitch, plus you get that 1 extra health. that is good, but it's not something like the Black Lotus where if you have it in your hand on turn one, there are certain decks with the Black Lotus and Magic the Gathering where you can literally win the game on turn one if you have the Black Lotus in your hand. So it's like it's not going to be that powerful from what I see. Even in the future with other cards being made, I don't feel like these cards are going to be too overpowered, but they are going to have, they are powerful in their respect. And I do think that you are going to see play with them, but I definitely don't think that they're going to be like a staple in the you know tournaments at all. I don't think you're going to see tournaments where every single person has like a Heart of Fandel in their deck or an Eye of Affinity. Like everyone has a Fable card in their deck. I think it is going to be popular, especially with Unlimited, with these being printed more. I think it would be more of a thing that you'd see as people get the cards, but I definitely don't think that they're needed to play the game. And the biggest example I want to bring up, I'll go to a different screen. So this is kind of an example that kind of proves this point. So if you don't know what a Supreme is, this is a product that they sell. They are a what is it? They sell clothing, but apparently they're diversifying their portfolio and they're selling you fold up chairs for $250. And you might say, Bronson, I've never heard of this jank company. What is this? What are you trying to sell me this chair for $250? And I'm going to tell you this, man. They're doing the same thing. There's a low supply of chairs that they printed and they're selling it out to the public because they just don't have as many that they make. They know that supply is a huge, proponent of not only, price but also perception of your product. So I feel like they're capitalizing on that kind of same, a very similar aspect where if you have a low supply, it's going to make the price higher. And Supreme obviously has a much higher demand than Flesh and Blood, so they probably printed out these 10,000 of these chairs. I don't know what they did, but I can tell you that it's a very similar concept where low supply breeds higher price and can produce higher demand because of perception of collectability and that limited kind of feel. I feel like that's really the main factor in play. And again, there's a lot of other factors in play, and I just wanted to touch upon like the main reason why these are doing what they're doing in the secondary market, because I know there's a lot of people out there, especially the new people who come into Flesh and Blood, and they see that these cards are just insane prices on eBay and other places, and they're like, whoa, wow, they must be really good. Do you see that? The card's over $1,000. It's over 2,000. It must be like the best card ever. And the funny point is, it's not, in my opinion. I mean, it's they're good. I'm not gonna say that these cards are trash. They're horrible. I'm just saying that they're not as overpowered as you might think. If you read the power level, the most you can do is pitch for 3, and then you get a nice little side effect at this point in time. Now, I want to really delve into the reason. So you're saying, you're like, Bronson, I don't really like what you're saying to me. I don't know, understand why would they make cards that are super expensive and they have really low supply and they really don't have a purpose. Well, it really kind of boils down to, and there's a really great guy on Reddit who showed me that there's I'm gonna rant a little bit at the end, just kind of delving into what I feel like the purpose and the game design of these cards are. If you don't care about that, you can tune out right now. But basically, the game design around these cards, I feel, is James White and Legend Story Studios, whoever was the brilliant person behind this. I feel like they have the two promises to their consumer, right? They want the game to be collectible, and they also want community and people to actually play the game to be like a collectible product. So those are two nice promises that they're making to you because they care about you and they want you to play Flesh and Blood. But if you think about it, those two promises can sometimes, collide, and you have different issues where, those two promises are conflicting. So the main point of this is the Fable cards. You have uh, it's estimated that there's like 550 of the Heart of Fandels in existence, right? Does that make it really collectible? Yeah. Yeah, it does. Does it make it very playable? Well, for the 550 people who have these, yes, but for the rest of us in the world who do not have this, it makes it really hard to be playable. So you can see that that is a conflict. Collectability and playability, or I say playability on their site, they use the word, community, but it's really playing with other people. Playability and collectability are the two promises that are really kind of going at it with each other. And I want to pan over to that right now. So if you don't believe me on that, wait 2 seconds and you're going to believe me. So this is the website for Flesh and Blood. If you go to the articles section and you hit the really far back button and you're like, I want to go to the very back, you're going to see these two articles that James White, the developer, the CEO, the main man, is saying on his site. Why we aren't making a digital game, but basically those two articles is basically saying why we are making this game, what is our core values, and the core values is collectability and community. So basically collectability and playability. So those are the two promises he's making to the consumer that's really important for Legend Story Studios as a whole, and really the solution and the reason why these Fable cards are this expensive is the supply. So they made the supply of these cards, right, really low. Made it really collectible. So that is really set in stone. But playability, well, you really don't need the Fable cards to play the game. It's not needed. It's definitely a thing that you can have to play certain types of meta type games, but you don't need it. And that's why the cards are built the way they are. That's why the Fable cards aren't overpowered. To solve this conflict between the two main promises of collectability and playability. If the cards were too overpowered, the game wouldn't be as playable as it would be because you would need those cards that you can't get. So you can really see that there's a conflict. If you make something extremely collectible and you can't play with it, then you have a really not synergistic thing going on here. But because they made these cards really collectible and they made it so you didn't need it to actually play the game, it really solved that conflict. And what I really like too is I feel like the way that they did the unlimited set and the first printing also solves this issue of the conflict between those two promises. So you have the first edition print run and the unlimited. The first edition one is the collectability side, man, and then the unlimited print is the playability with the community. And I'll link down below the GDC talk that I'm talking about that talks about this conflict between two promises, and I really enjoyed it. Some guy on Reddit gave me the link to that one because I had this issue and I was trying to think of a related topic, and he said, "Wow, this really sounds like this." So yeah, and there's a guy recently on YouTube. You know who you are, who prompted me to make this video about the Fable cards. I hope this answers your question a little bit of what the inner workings of Bronson's mind are. I don't want to go into price at this time for these cards. I might comment on the future. The market's crazy. If you look at the market for these cards, it's like it's just getting in a little insane and too crazy for me to even comment on it. And I'll even guys, I want to tell you too, there's a lot of Black Lotuses that some months they sold for $5,000 and then the next month they sold for 10,000 and 15. Like the prices on stuff that has low supply, there's a lot of swings, and it's really hard to peg like a price point of these things, especially when it all comes down to perception and how limited a supply these are. I mean, at the end of the day though, it really is simple. If you have the money and you like the card for what it is, you know, consider it. I know I would if I had a ton of money and money wasn't as much of an issue for me. I would definitely like consider it. Like if I had a lot of disposable income that I didn't care about, like expending on that as an expense for now. But anyway, for investment stuff, I'm not giving you investment advice, but I definitely, it's just too hard to tell with this thing, man. It's just too hard. It's just a really, it's it's just really crazy. I'm amazed every day. And I know you guys, if you haven't been around for a while, these cards used to sell for like $250, $300, $400, and things just have gotten so crazy recently. And with Unlimited coming out, man, I don't know what's going to happen with these things. But just to wrap it up here, the reason why these cards are going crazy in the secondary market and the reason why the price fluctuates as much as it does is the low supply. There's not that many that were printed. This is supposed to be the chase thing, and the really good solace that you can have over that is that these cards are not overpowered in their nature. They are good, they can help you win the game, but they are definitely not needed to build a powerful Flesh and Blood deck that is very competitive in nationals and in tournaments. You can still build competitive decks, but you can also build it with these cards in them. And I feel like that's a really great way to solve the conflict between collectability and playability for the players, because if you did have cards where these Fable cards were extremely overpowered and you needed them to win the game, it would ruin that playability aspect, and that it would really break that promise for the game. So making them the way they did, really does substantiate that those two promises can be intact, and I think that this really perpetuates into their products. So they have the first edition, which is collectible, and then the unlimited, which is playable. So I really like the direction that they made with these. But I mean, overall too, they're just beautiful cards. I love looking at them. I wish I had I wish I had one of them. Maybe I'll open one in a box one day. We'll definitely see. But yeah, I mean that's all there is really to know for now on these things. The big thing to note too at the end too is figuring out the exact print run will be huge. I mean, it's been estimated for a very long time that these things are around 550, because of there's a really cool Reddit post by AC Whammy back in the day, and yeah, he did the whole print thing based off the Facebook numbers. I made a video about that, but it's just it's gonna be really big news when they finally announce, like, this is how many Heart of Fandales, this is how many Eye of Ophidias. That's gonna be like a very interesting pivotal like point in the collectability scene. And I don't know. We'll see what happens. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Yeah, and let me know what you think. Really curious of what you guys think. Is Bronson crazy? Am I going off the rails? Did I say something weird? Let me know. Have a good one.